probably 50 yards in front of them from everything out here. And these men start moving against the right flank of the Union. And Baxter's men, Baxter's known for this. This is what his moment, like I said, you spend your whole life, and everything, the most significant thing that may happen in your life may happen in a minute and a half. Well, Baxter's minute and a half happens, tenaciously holding on to this with the frontal assaults from several brigades of the Confederates, is that he keeps cool. He says, they don't know we're here because of all that smoke. So everybody takes the flag, puts it down. That's a no-no in terms of etiquette because that like freaks soldiers out when they can't say, putting the flag down, nobody knows we're here. And he hides behind the rock wall. Iverson's men, in perfect formation, move across to hit them in that flank. When they get about 50 feet from that, the command goes, stand up and fire. They stand up and they wipe out the whole brigade. The brigade's done. It's done. It's just out. As a matter of fact, the stories that I've read is that when the commander Iverson was sitting up here, people call him a coward. There's some reasons why he maybe wasn't with them or what. Like most of them are always on horseback. He was back here. Said, I could see my men, and they were lying in the ground in perfect formation, but nobody was moving. According to narratives, they were just all dead in rows. They just got completely. So you saw Archer's brigade got whacked. The other brigade, the Brockenbrow's brigade, gets whacked. Cutler takes. In other words, the Confederates are not doing very well, even though they have overwhelming advantage. And the reason is something that's always dismissed in the narratives of the Civil War, and that is because in this instance, the Union Army has the defensive position that's advantageous. This is what the Confederates constantly have in the war. So when the shoe's on the other foot, we don't do very well. Well, they're not doing very well either. They're getting whacked because they're moving against entrenched positions, or positions where the geography's to the advantage of the Union. But it's going to change now because that geography's not in our advantage. And I mean our because I'm a Southern, even though I'm from Arkansas. So the other story is, I can tell it to you, is that right at the very end, when finally Dole's division moves out here, and there's another guy named O'Neill, and O'Neill kind of hits him right in the flank. In other words, right along that rock wall. They're on the other side of that rock wall, so if we hit them, perpendicular, we could strafe them right down the side. O'Neill does the same thing. He doesn't ride into battle either. Who knows why? Frankly, it's probably because Lee is losing too many of his good commanders. He's so aggressive that what's happening is it's finally taking the toll on his army. The kind of fine leaders that he had at the beginning, he's shot them all to pieces, which is one of the great criticisms of Robert E. Lee. He's too aggressive. Anyway, they march here, and when they finally realize, with Junius Daniels coming in this way, Iverson here, Dole's here, O'Neill here, this is going to collapse. It's going to collapse any moment. They know it's going to collapse. Their artillery's opening up. The 11th Corps is already retreating through the town. And General Robinson, who's one of the commanders under Reynolds, goes to a young man who I think is like 30 years old, and he says his name is Colonel Tilden of the 16th Maine, the 20th Maine, 16th Maine. This just isn't heroic. He says, I need you to hold this position so my army can get out of this hole. I'm throwing you to the dogs. The guy turns around and says, very well. The 16th Massachusetts is up in this area. I've never been over there, but my suspicion is that there's got to be a monument over there. The 16th Massachusetts held these guys back. I mean, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 5 brigades on this side, and it's one regiment. So it's like, what, 20 to 1, 25 to 1. They're just there to freak them out so that the army can escape to Cemetery Ridge.
And again, they're in the defensive.
Yeah, that is their advantage because they're in the woods, but it's just there's not enough of them. And Tilden's men, I think, start this battle with about 300 men, and I think they walk away with about 40. Tilden somehow survives. He's wounded badly, but this is the story that I told you. Whereas the colors were there, they ripped the colors apart, broke the stuff. Now, what I'm told is, and you can actually find this stuff on the internet, some of it survived. Many of those men went to Andersonville and Belle Island and didn't survive. They starved to death or died. But pieces of that flag are still around.
So that's another
heroic guy. He threw himself into the fire so that the army could get away.
And the army behind that stand just retreated up the hill.
Retreated. Now I'm going to tell you what, the Confederates were chasing them right through the town. At this time there was a brickyard there. Okay, let me tell you, when Oliver Otis came up and he was sitting on Cemetery Ridge and he says, this is the real estate we got to have. We got to keep this real estate. If this breaks, we have no chance of winning. So what he did is he kept one of his commanders back, a guy named Adolf Steinwehr. He was a German, a Prussian, and he, like my wife, was just like the guns and the war. No.
She's way too far away.
My wife never fires again. She's never fired. But he was trained in as a Prussian army officer. Rigid. I'll show you a picture of him. He looks like a German, and he was given two brigades to hold that position over there. One under Coster, and another named Smith. And when the army retreated, he sent one of the brigades forward, Coster. They had a knockdown, drag-out fight, and we got the worst of it. They took about 4,000 prisoners of war here. In other words, it decimated the 11th Corps because they just couldn't hold it. But many of them got up to that ridge. And by that time, this is a great tribute to the Union Army. Even though they're vastly outnumbered on the first day, they wear the Confederate Army out because there's no more energy in them. They've been fighting all day since 7 o'clock in the morning, and they don't have any ump. So in the movie, you said there was that hill, and we were supposed to take the hill, but Lee said take it if practicable. Well, we just didn't take it. Well, it's because the army was wore out. He was just wore out.
The Confederates didn't have any shoes.
Yeah, well. And that's
they didn't have any shoes at the beginning of the battle. They didn't have any shoes at the end of the battle.
No.
So that hill had to be.
Now, you see, okay. Now you see where the green tank is. That actually right there is Cope's Hill in front of, and over right behind where the big tree is. Right behind that ridge right there is Cemetery Hill. Okay. But it all forms kind of one ridge.
Right.
Remember the fish hook?
Yeah.
Well, that's the fish hook, and it'll go all the way. You can see through down to Little and Big or Round Top and Little Round Top down there, and that's where the hellacious battle is going to be fought. I mean, these are just hors d'oeuvres. We're just warming up. We're just warming up, because then because the whole army is going to come up. Because we only have 2 corps. There's 7 corps in the Union Army, and only 2 of them have been engaged. 2/3 of the army of the Confederate has been engaged already. So just think about that. Only, what is it? About 25% of the Union Army has been engaged. 2/3 of the Confederates, and they're wore out. Once again, I'm bringing this to because everybody talks about how great the Confederate Army is. Well, is it? Yeah. I mean, at least in this battle, the Union Army did very, very well. Okay. But like I said, when they retreated, they got about 5,000, 4,000 prisoners. That's bad. Union prisoners because they got caught in the streets. One of the commanders of the brigades was named Alexander Schimmelpfennig. These good German names, Alexander Schimmelpfennig. And he had a subordinate named Herbert von Amswehr. And when the line started to collapse, they hightailed it. They weren't cowards. They just had to get out as fast as they could. Headed into the little town of Gettysburg, and they didn't know how to get out of it because all the where's north? I don't know how to get out of here. And Schimmelpfennig hid out for the remainder of the battle. Not because he's a coward, in a woman's house. And apparently he had his sword and he didn't want to surrender it, so he gave it to the lady in the house, and she apparently kept it under her hoop dress, so nobody would know that it was. Nobody checked there. No son and gentleman had checked that. So, and then when the battle was over, he emerged and everybody, Alexander, you're still alive. We love you, Alexander. One of the great stories is this guy. Remember Barlow? I said he was a real martinet. He was. As the soldiers were coming through town, remember I said there was water. They'd say, "Oh, the American Army's here to help us." They were giving water, and he just knocked the water out of their hands. Said, "We don't have time for this nonsense. You got to come up." And some people said, "What do you think? You got to have water. You drink it. You're going into battle." He had placed his commander under arrest. What was his name? I'm afraid I can't remember what his name. But one of the brigade commanders put under arrest, who was beloved German. Apparently he could swear in German better than anybody. And as a matter of fact, he had a conversation coming into town with Oliver Otis Howard, and they're riding. I can see it riding on horseback, and they're talking about, we're going to die in battle. And apparently Oliver Otis Howard says, "Well, it's God's will. You have no control over it." And the German said, "Was ist die Große?" He starts cursing in German. What kind of stupid commander do I have here? But anyway, he gets arrested And right before battle, he said, "I got to have my trained commander in." So he gets he releases him from arrest from the provost marshal. He comes riding through town, and all the journalists go, "Yeah, huzzah! The Germans are back again." So, anyway, his name will come back. Leopold von Gilsa. Von Gilsa. Leopold von Gilsa. Okay, anyway, that's a cheer and a flash of his sword that sent an inspiration along the line. Full 10 paces in front he sprang. 10 paces, more than half the distance between his unit and the enemy line. "Come on, come on, come on, boys," he shouts. And the color sergeant, this guy, Andrew Tozier, and the color guard leap off the rock after him, and everybody follows. And only because the Alabamans were out of ammunition too, they were able to secure the extreme right wing, the extreme left wing of the Union Army. But this is what, you know, we have a way to kind of condense history to make it palatable so that we can kind of get it in our heads. Notice that there's a whole bunch of people here. Of course, Chamberlain is a hero, no doubt, but there are people you never heard of here. Ellis, you know, Melchor. Who are these people? They didn't get Medal of Honor. They didn't get a Medal of Honor. Sickles got a Medal of Honor. So remember that next time. But,
I didn't know that Alabama was Alabama as well.
Well, they were exhausted. They had been, you know, remember, they had forced marched the whole day. They were really tired when they came on up here.
And they're fighting uphill.
And they're fighting uphill. Now, the thing is that Confederate regiments were generally almost 50% bigger than Union regiments. So that when you say this was a regiment here and a regiment there, well, this regiment's bigger. But not only that, in the movie, it's more than the 15th Alabama. The 47th Alabama is coming up on this side too. They're getting pinched between them. And now here's the take. It's kind of, I guess, what would you call it, anticlimactic. And that is, on the other side of this hill, there were still elements. Remember that unit that hiked or marched 35 miles? It had arrived just about 4 o'clock. And that was the biggest corps in the Union Army. There were 15,000 men in there. And they were down there. So my suspicion is, even though I really like Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, if the elements of the 15th and the 47th Alabama got over the hill, they would have just been shot to pieces. So it probably wouldn't have resulted quite in what we expect. But it meant, what it might have meant, that the whole battle would have shifted back, and you know how many more thousands of men would have died. But the point is that it stopped here. And that's why, you know, unlike comic books, the whole history of the world generally doesn't turn on one guy. It turns on the accumulated heroic actions of countless unnamed people. And that's the way this battle is. But there are, I mean, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain is definitely a hero. There's no question about it. But there's a lot of heroes in the 20th Maine that we don't even know their names. And this is one of them. This is why you need to remember. Captain Ellis Spears, Lieutenant Melcher. They're ones that you should take away. Those are the guys that really saved the day. Anyway, we're doing this on fast forward, so.
All right. I can go on to the next section.
Okay, well, shall we just go down?